FYI, no, this ain't the Wiz. But anyways, just thinking about some of the things that I had to go over. Um, you know, as I was just saying, like whether or not people end up forgiving you, um, you got to know how to not remain cold. You got to not remain in that position. Um, and as I've said, being a person who has dealt with things like that, with the weight of certain thoughts, as I've said, situation with my sister, different things. She, found out certain things about my dad or whatnot. Um, that is information that my dad actually told me when I was 9. Now, wondering why he used that to, or why he told me that, um, especially at that age, like it didn't make sense, but it was something that I knew instinctively, like not to tell her. Um, and so I kept it to myself, and eventually ended up making me look bad. But you know, those things, trying to protect people, trying to look out for people, um, those are things that come really natural to me. And as I said, as things have played out, it shows me the direction that the world is going in, and how much I got to stay guarded. Um, how much I got to recognize my importance, and getting myself in the right position so I can continue to be the person that God created me to be. Um, a lot of times we can get distracted by the different cares of this world, trying to please different people. And if people want to make things right with you, like you won't have to go to extremes in order to prove certain things to them. People just understand that you have a sincere heart towards them, and whether or not people can read that on you, you got to leave that up to them and God. But it's important for you to manage the things within yourself, the things that you know that are virtuous, and protect yourself from this world, because the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Um, Never once have I seen the enemy, once he was done with somebody, try to come back and pick them up, or try to pick somebody up in the process of them going through things. And so it's important that we recognize the enemy, recognize who our enemy really is. Um, I've never seen the enemy, uh, heal people, give people encouraging words. I've never seen that. And man, even with that being said, because I don't want to get too far off, there are some things that we should definitely be leery of. We should be leery of miracles and different things. But staying on the specific subject that I'm on, um, when it comes to different people in your life who are showing you fruit, who are extending love, who are extending grace to you, don't abuse that. Um, Many people end up lonely because of that. I've had to tell plenty of people that you can force yourself into anything. You can go into something that you're not supposed to be in, and I've done that. I've had to learn that myself. But as I've said, man, I know when I'm right about stuff. I don't gaslight myself on things that I'm strongly convicted on, but at times, because I do care about people, and I want to make sure that, as I've said before, I like leaving a situation much better than, if I have to leave that situation, I like leaving it a lot better than I started in that situation. Um, we just got to bear in mind to stay focused on what God is instructing us to do. And as I've said, you cannot allow people to damage your fruit, to damage the good things about your characteristics, to try to project things onto you, that are not true. Um, One of the most frustrating things that people have tried to project on me is abuse, whether it be verbal or physical. And because people's lack of understanding with certain things. Now, that's not saying that I didn't say anything that I wasn't supposed to say over the last couple years because of the situation that I was going through. But to be verbally abusive and physically abusive, like, I don't take those accusations light. And it's crazy, the same people who accuse me of those things, same people I pray for, including my son's mother. So regardless of anything, I'm going to try my best to continue to be myself, operate through the fruits. But it's hard not being around like-minded people who are aware of the times, aware of the different things that the enemy are trying to do to us. And, they're still, either they're striving to get to where they need to go, or they are where they need to be at, and they're trying to bring other people with them, and they're not making it this selfish thing, or trying to capitalize off somebody else's losses. And so back to what I was saying in the first message, man, make sure that your heart isn't growing cold towards people. Make sure that, even if you experience something, you ain't got to do, you ain't got to overextend yourself, but make sure that even if you go through some things, that you would do the same thing the next day or after you experience that thing that you would do even before that. Christ went through things and he still healed people. He still prayed for people. Even his disciples left him in his, most critical time of his life. And he still was faithful to what God called him to do. And so it's important for us to do that. Don't let people gaslight you. Don't let people, as I said, people have been trying to project certain things on me. People will talk about the worst of things, talk about different things that you had to experience, traumatizing things. And it's all about themselves at the end of the day. And so recognize who's who, and don't lose the fruit that God gave to you. Peace.